What it do, baby? Welcome, guys, to the 30-minute podcast with me, your host, Tito. Season 2. And before I dive into it too much, right, or too deep, I just want to say thank you to those of you who have subscribed to the new YouTube channel. I said that I've created a new YouTube channel for this podcast. Season 1 was on my other channel where I do my Nollywood movie reviews. But now season 2, the podcast has its own channel. Thank you to those of you who've subscribed there. I see you currently. We are at 11 subscribers on the 30-minute podcast YouTube channel, and I'm chuffed. I'm really happy. It seems small, but I mean, when you're starting something from the ground up or from ground zero, every single unit, or in this case, every single human being really counts. And surprisingly, episode 1 is doing well. 598 views so far, and for a 50-minute episode. If you haven't seen that, go and check it out. It was where I talked about and gave advice to the men from season 5 of Love is Blind. Yeah. Anyway, guys, today on this episode, before we do dive into it, do remember to do the usual things. If you're listening to this podcast on an audio platform, please give it as many stars as possible in terms of rating, or leave a review down below. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know the drill. Please like the video by clicking on the like button, and subscribe to the channel as well by clicking on the black subscribe button. Now that is more important than ever, seeing as this is a brand new YouTube channel. On today's episode of the podcast, I'm going to be talking about something that I'm very keen on, very interested in, and it's on why people get angry when they're asked the question, what do you bring to the table? Yeah, so it's that, or like a variant or variation of that. And this came about from a WhatsApp group that I'm in, where someone said in church that day, I think it was on a Sunday or just last Sunday, they said that during a Q&A session, someone asked the pastor, first of all, it's a weird place to be asking this kind of question. Someone asked the pastor, how do they answer the question, what do I bring to the table? As in, what do they say, to that kind of question? And when this person brought it up in the WhatsApp group, I was like, oh gosh, this question again is getting played out. It's so tired. It's annoying. Why do people still ask this silly question? But the more we discussed it on the WhatsApp group, the more I understood why people get upset when they're asked that question. And the more I understood why that question is actually very relevant. And it's a good question, not just to ask the person that you're seeing or dating or talking to, but it's a good question to ask yourself. Because you might as well know what it is you're bringing to a relationship or to a marriage. But yeah, that will be discussed later on this episode. For now, let's begin by talking about why people actually get upset when they're asked that question. Do you get upset, you listening or you watching, when someone, or if someone were to ask you, from across a dinner table, or, where you guys are like on a date or something, if they were to ask you, so what do you bring to the table? Would you be upset by that question? Would it take you off? So why people get upset by the question? First of all, I think it's because it can come off as a bit condescending, because it suggests, or we have the tendency or the proclivity to assume that the person asking that question thinks that they have the power, like they are the ones making the decision as to whether or not we're going to become an item. Because I think it's very similar to when you're interviewing for a job and they ask you during the interview, so what are you going to bring to this company? In that kind of situation, the power dynamic is quite clear. The company has the position that you want, where they will be paying you a salary. So you're kind of at their mercy, even though you are bringing value to the company, but they determine whether you get the job or not. And because that question, what do you bring to the company, is very similar to the question, what do you bring to the table, it feels like the person asking that question in a dating context feels like they're the ones who have, or they're the one rather, who have the power, and who will decide whether or not we become a thing. So it comes off, it gives condescending kind of, yeah. So that's the first reason why people don't like that question. The second reason is because sometimes when you're asked a question like that, it would feel like, okay, so all my sterling qualities, all my good qualities and features that I've been, displaying all this while that we've been talking and getting to know each other, you haven't seen them. You haven't seen that I'm a great communicator. You haven't seen that I'm, a good leader. You haven't seen that I'm, religious and prayerful, and I have a good relationship with my faith or my Lord and Savior, if you're a Christian or whatnot. So when someone asks that question, it feels like they haven't been paying attention and they haven't seen all your good qualities, and that can feel like, what the heck? So there's that. The third reason why I think some people get upset when they're asked that question is because it kind of feels like, and this does happen in some cases, it feels like the person asking is only out for their own good or what they can get from the relationship if the relationship were to materialize, right? It kind of feels like they just want to exploit. They want to know what you have to offer, what you're bringing to the table, so that they'll know how they can maximize that without necessarily talking about what they plan to contribute to the union or bring to this same table. So it can feel a bit exploitative, if we're being honest. So I think those are the three reasons why people get a bit ticked off when they're asked that question, what do you bring to the table? And it's understandable, Like I said, when we discussed it in the WhatsApp group, I was taken aback and I was a bit pissed off too when I heard it. But yeah. So those are the reasons. Now, researching this topic online, I think I've discovered that more often than not, or most of the time rather, it's men that ask this question of women, what do you bring to the table, when they're dating or on a date or talking to each other. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is why men. This whole conversation, trust me, it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's an uncomfortable topic to thrash out or to discuss, but it's very relevant. And yeah, as I was thinking about this whole topic, like I said earlier, I saw how relevant the question is and how important it is. So let's continue. Why men tend to ask this question, what do you bring to the table? I think it's because through the centuries, right, in a male and female relationship, be it predominantly marriage anyway, the role of the man hasn't changed that much. Essentially the man is meant to love, provide, and protect for his wife and his family. And through the years and as things have changed, those things haven't changed that much. That's since like maybe even thousands of years ago, that was the job description. And even now, that's still the main job description. Things haven't changed that much in terms of what men are meant to do in a marriage. But for women, it's a bit different. Way back when, or up until recently, what was expected of a woman in a relationship, predominantly in a marriage. Let's try and stick with marriage, right? What was expected of a woman in a marriage is to be like the homemaker and to, raise the children and to just nurture the home and the family. The nurturer, essentially, right? But up until recently, maybe some would say with the advent of feminism and gender equality and all those movements, and with the way the economy is or the world is these days, it seems like there are more things that are required from women in a union and in a partnership, in a heterosexual, romantic union, partnership, marriage, whatever you want to call it. For example, the way the economy has been over the past few years, maybe even decades, a joint household income or a dual household income, I should say, is required to have a good, quality of life for a family in many cases these days. So more beyond just being a good homemaker and raising the kids and that kind of thing, it's now kind of the norm for, a woman to also contribute and to provide or to provide or join the man in providing for the home and contributing to the sustenance and the development of the home economically, right? So there's that. And there, even like in terms of, I know we all hate this word or this term, manual labor. There's some heavy lifting and some physical aspects of raising a family, starting a family, keeping a home that prior to now were like the man's job. But now, women, things would be easier. The marriage or the home or the union would be easier if the woman or the wife would help out or contribute in that way as well, by way of physical labor or other things like that. Not too many things are coming to mind, but I'm sure you guys understand. So because of that dynamic that has changed in recent times, when a man asks a woman on a date, while they're on a date, when he asks her, so what do you bring to the table? He wants to find out if she has the traditional mindset of, I'm just meant to be this is the woman now, believing that she's just meant to be the homemaker, cook the meals, raise the kids, nurture the home, and that's it. Even if she does work, she's not meant to contribute part of her income and stuff like that. So when a man asks the question, like I said, that's what he wants to find out. Is she still stuck in the traditional mindset, or is she more progressive now? And has she come to the modern age where women are pulling their weight as well in a successful marriage, because that's just what life and the world requires these days, or has thrust upon us to have a good quality of life as a family. So that's why the man is asking largely. Sometimes as well, men ask, well, many times too, in contemporary relationships and in the cities, right? Men ask women what they bring to the table to find out if she thinks that having a great body or her looks or, great sex is all she plans to bring to the union or to the marriage or to the relationship. Because there are women like that who think that that's sufficient. They have a banging body and they look great, and men just want physical stuff. So if they can provide the physical stuff in good proportion and with good specifications, then that should be enough for the man. But yeah, so for a lot of men these days, that won't cut it. Yeah, and I think women by now should know that men, that stuff attracts us, but that stuff doesn't necessarily keep us. Yeah. So when we ask, sometimes we want to know if she thinks that it's just her physical features that she plans to bring to the table or to the relationship. So those are the reasons why men ask, to find out where the woman's head is at. Is she willing to contribute to the relationship or to the marriage beyond the traditional requirements, and is she superficial, or rather, is she superficial, and does she just think that her beauty and her looks are sufficient to keep a home and to keep him and to just sustain the relationship from her end? But why women, right, ask the question, because women do ask the question as well. Women ask the question of men, what do you bring to the table, to find out if he plans to do the things that men are, those roles that have been ascribed to men, which I mentioned earlier, to love and protect, to love his wife, to protect his wife, and to provide for his wife, by extension, his family, right, that he creates with this wife. So when a woman asks a man, what do you bring to the table? She wants to know if he has that traditional mindset, if that foundation of, love, protection, and provision are, things that matter to him and things that he plans on providing. Because truth be told, these days, you'd be surprised, not all men want to do those things. Not all men want to love their wives, I was going to say unconditionally, but like I said in episode 1, unconditional love is a sketchy subject, is a touchy subject. But not all men plan on loving just their wives, surprisingly, right? Or loving them the way that they should love their wife. That's one. Not all men want to be able to provide. And then protection as well is a lot of men these days, not a lot of men, but it's not unusual to find these days that some men are not really interested in protecting their family or their home. It should come naturally, and most times it does, but the world is so funny these days that these basic things are not so basic anymore with men. So when a woman asks that question, she wants to know if those foundational things are, values that he holds and things he wants to bring to the table. But she also wants to know, and this is also very important, if he thinks beyond those foundational things. Because nowadays, emotional intelligence is a requirement of men, or something that women require from men. To be emotionally intelligent, women require assurance and like reassurance. Women require faithfulness. Yeah, because there's lots of cheating going around these days. So it's not unusual. It's not out of the ordinary for a woman to expect fidelity, or wants to hear that fidelity, trust, and commitment are things that a man plans to bring to the table or to his union or to his marriage, right? So these I wouldn't say softer things, but these other things are very important nowadays because they weren't asked back in the days. They weren't necessarily requirements back in the days. Yeah. Back in the days, maybe 50s, 60s, 70s, it was just protect, provide, and love. But now, also with the way, things are and how the world has changed, there's a lot more emotional, mental, and like not physical, social and spiritual like requirements that women need from men. So when a woman asks, "What do you bring to the table?" she may also want to find out if this man is if he's self-aware and emotionally intelligent enough to want to provide these things. And then could also be a case of whether he's open to other things. Because when you ask people questions, sometimes, especially questions like this one, they can be quite confined. Like if a man says he just wants to love, protect, and provide, nothing more, that's it. That's quite limiting. That shows that he has a like closed off mindset. He's not open to change and the different dynamic alterations that life may throw at both of you when you do get married. So that's it. Like it depicts a closed mindset. But if a man says those three things and he's still open to the other things that life may throw their way as the years progress, that shows like an open mindset, a man who is open to navigating the storms and the the highways and byways, the twists and turns that life will that life will send their way when they do settle down. So that's another thing, the how open-minded or closed-minded, as the case may be, the man is. So these are the reasons why women ask men, "What do you bring to the table?" And I dare I say some of the things that they want to hear. Yeah, so I guess for both men and women, things have changed over the past maybe 30, 40 years, maybe since the 80s, but predominantly like since 2000 until like now. Yeah, things have changed in the dating world and in marriage, and people have found that the previous generation and previous generations have taken things for granted and perhaps haven't asked the right questions or didn't ask the right questions when they were courting and dating, which is why now people are asking these tough questions. And I'm all for it. I'm a big advocate of asking tough questions, particularly when it comes to dating and relationships, because it's one thing to ask a tough question. It's another thing to actually be able to ask a tough question. To be able to ask your partner or somebody that you're dating tough questions like, okay, have you ever cheated before? Under what circumstances would you be unfaithful to your partner? Be it when you're dating or be it in marriage. What would need to happen for you to step out on your relationship? Or a question like, what would make you like get closed off or give your partner the cold shoulder or the silent treatment? Or one that I particularly like and I plan to ask, when I settle down or before I settle down with the woman, I eventually will settle down with is, and it's a very morbid one, but it's one I want to have nonetheless. If one of us, or well, to be honest, a matter of when, but let's stick with if one of us were to pass away, hopefully many years from now, will you remarry? Or how many years would you spend mourning me? Let's say it's me now, for example. If I were to pass away decades from now, after we've been happily married for years and years or decades and decades, how long would you mourn me for? Would you get back into the date? Would you try and remarry? What would you like for me to leave behind for you? Or what would you like for me to put in place, to make sure that you're okay after I've gone to go and be with our Lord Jesus, and vice versa. Like I said, a very morbid topic or conversation, but I would like to have that conversation. And the mere fact that I can ask that question of my partner and, have a conversation with them about it, it speaks volumes. Because I'm sure there are lots of couples married or even dating that you dare not even bring that kind of topic up with them because they'd feel it would be off-putting, or it would be weird, or it would be uncomfortable. But I want to be in the kind of relationship or a marriage where I'm free, or we are free, to ask uncomfortable questions. Because once you have those conversations, once you broach those uncomfortable, topics and whatnot, you feel more connected to the person, to your person, and you feel like there's nothing that you can't bring up with them. Yeah, and lots of things I feel in many relationships and marriages, things go terribly wrong, or even marriages crash because people are too scared to ask uncomfortable questions. You know, people are too scared to ask uncomfortable questions. So I think we should be asking more uncomfortable questions, and we should also be mature enough or learn how to answer all such questions because we'll be better for it. I honestly think so. I'm a big fan of asking uncomfortable questions. Okay, so I think on a final note, right? The whole issue of what do you bring to the table as we get close to 30 minutes, right? I I see how it's off-putting. I understand that, but I think what people can do is to rephrase the question, because sometimes it's the way the question sounds, not necessarily the intent behind the question. So I think if people were to ask something in like, and I wrote this down, something like what are some of the things that you think you will do or that you think will be required of you to make your marriage successful when you eventually do get married someday? You see, when you phrase it like that, it's the same question as what do you bring to the table? What do you think? What are some of the things you think you will do or that will be required of you for you to make your marriage successful when you eventually do get married someday? Same question, but when you ask it that way, you've kind of made it impersonal. You're making it sound like when you do get married someday, maybe not to me, to somebody else. I'm not trying to pitch myself. When you do get married to someone, what are some of the things that you are going to do or you feel will be required of you to make your union or your marriage successful? Then if the person is, intelligent, and hopefully they are, they'll be like, that's a great question. And they'll answer the question sufficiently. And plus, seeing that both of you are on a date or you've been talking to each other for a while, I mean, they're not stupid. They know that you're kind of like quizzing them on, what they will bring to a marriage if two of you were to get married. So they can read between the lines and understand the heart or the purpose behind that question. And it's less intrusive. It's less intrusive. Let's stick with intrusive. It's a less intrusive way of asking that question. And another technique, right, to find out what you want to find out, instead of asking the question, what do you bring to the table, is to, first of all, answer that question for yourself before throwing it to the other person. It could be through a harmless conversation on, what's your vision for like a solid marriage? What does a happy, long-lasting, loving marriage look like for you? And what would it take on your end for that to happen? It's a simple question, and once you ask the question, you can be like, okay, for me, and you can answer after I do. For me, I think that would be me being like the leader as a man, being like the head of the home, which tends to be what's required of me, to also be the like spiritual head of the home, praying for my family, praying with my wife, lifting us up in prayer regularly, being a good communicator. I know how much communication means to women, and just communicating my emotions with my wife, talking about pretty much everything, just knowing that she can talk to me about anything. Also, trust and fidelity. I know it's a big issue these days. Just showing my wife that she can trust me, letting her know that I'm very much against infidelity and adultery, and I plan to be entirely 100% faithful to her, mind, body, and spirit. No, mind, body, and soul. You get the idea, to her, and I expect the same. Just communicating how you feel, or sorry, not how you feel, but how you plan or intend to make your marriage or successful in terms of your vision for a happy marriage? So I'd answer that, and then I'd throw the question to her. How about you? What are some of the things you plan to do, to make your marriage successful, or to realize that vision that you have of a happy, loving, long-lasting marriage? You see, so doing it that way, by rephrasing the question, and then first of all you answering it, then throwing it to them, that's another way to essentially get the same answers from, that question which people dread. What do you bring to the table? So in conclusion, guys, I think the question is actually a really good one. I think lots of marriages fail and relationships fail because people don't ask the right questions or relevant questions like that. Like, what do you bring to the table? And in terms of asking, if their needs will be met. I think people are really quite upset when they're asked that question, because it's a moment of self-realization for some people, because when they're asked that question, that's when they discover that they actually don't have that much to bring to a relationship or to the proverbial table, especially for people who rely on their looks only. When they're asked that question, that's when they realize that, oh gosh, all this while I've just been cruising or coasting on my looks and thinking that would be good enough. So that kind of hurts, and they kind of take offense based on that. And then other times people take offense to the question when the things that they say that they bring to the table are not the things that the person asking actually requires or wants. For example, I can tell the woman asking me, what do you bring to the table? I tell her, well, I feel like I'm a great communicator. I feel like I'd bring really great conversations to our marriage. I feel like, problem solving and just having a heart to heart and just generally communicating with each other, using my words carefully and, lovingly. I feel like I'd be really good at that. And I feel like that would really take us far in our union. I'm a man of faith, and I feel like, prayer and, praying with my wife, praying for my wife, and hopefully her doing the same would really, take our marriage to really good places generally. I could say all that, but if she doesn't require that from me, then, hey, tough. And if she says, yeah, that's nice, but I don't need you to be a great communicator. I don't need you to be a prayerful man. What I need you to be is to be a billionaire who who funds this lifestyle that I want. In which case, there could be a tendency for me to, get ticked off or to get offended, because what I have to offer seemingly is not good enough. But honestly, I don't think people should see it that way in most cases. Just see it as what I have to offer is not what this person wants. You just keep it moving until you find the person who wants what you have, and the person who you want what they have to offer as well in terms of what they bring to the table. So at the end of the day, I think there are no right or wrong answers. Yeah, generally. Maybe there's right or wrong answers for individuals, but generally there are no right or wrong answers. It's just a matter of you finding the person that wants what you have, and vice versa in terms of what you bring to the table. Anyway, guys, before we wrap up this episode, which has now, I think, exceeded 30 minutes, here's this week's edition, or this episode's edition, whatever, you understand in English, of What's New. So long. I think this is the first What's New of this season, but here's What's New, guys. On today's edition of Something New, I'm trying something else from Mega Chicken. I always mix that name up. Mega Chicken, and let's find out what it is. It's something from the breakfast menu. Waffles from the breakfast menu at Mega Chicken. And this waffle cost me 800 naira. So it's actually 2, but in the menu, it says 1. So I guess, I don't know. You do the math. It's not like 400 a piece. Maybe they count 1 as 2 pieces of, waffles. So I'm glad I didn't go for 2. If not, then I'd have had, 4, which I don't need. And I believe this is the syrup. I need to pop it in the microwave because it's cold. It's been a while since I came back from Mega Chicken. So let me just pop it in the microwave. For this episode, I think it's best you watch it. You watch the video version so that I can see the waffles and what comes with it and all that. Just put some of the syrup on top of the waffle. Okie dokie. Let's dig into it, shall we? Cheers. Very sweet. Very sweet. This would go really nicely with ice cream. Unfortunately, I don't have any. But hey, I mean, waffles are waffles. There's nothing special. I think what makes waffles different or special is the toppings. And I don't have much in terms of toppings. And, you know, the waffles only come with syrup. So that's all I got. But if you have, like, butter or ice cream or, you know, berries or whatever, you can spice it up when you get home. But for 800 naira for 2 pieces, although on the menu it says 1, it's not bad. It's not bad, actually. So, over 5, there's nothing special about these waffles, first of all. But over 5, I'll give it a 3. Mainly because it's value for money. But if you're buying waffles at Mega Chicken, probably take it to go. Or have it, if you're eating in, have it with other things. Like omelets, like an omelet or scrambled eggs or sausage or something like that. Or a club sandwich. But if you're taking out, have ice cream at home or something, you know, toppings for the waffles. I think you'll enjoy it better that way. So there it is, guys. This week's edition of What's New. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this episode as well. I actually enjoyed talking about this topic. Look out for part 2. Let's just call it part 2 for now. It may have a different title, but it will be tied to this topic. In that episode, I'll talk about the things that you can actually say that you bring to the table when someone asks you what you bring to the table. Because honestly, you know, they can ask you that question and you go blank. When in actual fact, there are lots of things that you can say with regards what you bring to a relationship or what you will bring to a marriage when you eventually do get married to make sure that that marriage is happy, loving, and successful. So that's what I'm going to talk about in part 2 of this video. I don't know when that will come out, but it should be this season 2. It should be close to this episode, actually. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the podcast. It's good to be back. This went better than I expected, and I'm really glad for that. I'm really happy about that. If you enjoyed this episode, you know the drill. Rate this podcast or this episode with 5 stars, as many stars as possible. Leave a review down below. If you're watching this on the brand new YouTube channel, be sure to click on the like button. First and foremost, share this episode with someone who you feel will get benefit or value out of this episode, especially regarding this topic of what do you bring to the table. It's a very common, very popular topic. I think people will get value from this particular episode, the things I talked about, and will help them see the question differently. Even my mind changed as I thought about this topic, as I was preparing for this episode. You know, it's not such a bad thing to be asked that question. So basically, if you know anyone who will enjoy the topic, share this episode with them, whether you're listening on an audio platform or you're watching it on the brand new YouTube channel. Lastly, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking on the black subscribe button down below. Thank you guys so much for your time. I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace.